Relays, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this past weekend. Unbeaten up-and-coming in the flyweight division out of Australia. Jasmine Parr, otherwise known as Jazzy Parr, the young daughter of kickboxing legend John Wayne Parr.
Jasmine was in action against Nasia Costello for the second time, advancing to a professional record of 3 wins, no losses, and no draws.
One of several bright up-and-comers from the Australian boxing scene. You know, in my previous video, we talked about how, the women's super flyweight division, in spite of there being a good talent pool there, good depth, and a good number of champions, good unification matches to make, that's a division that's really not buzzing right now. And Jasmine Parr, being as young as she is, campaigning at flyweight, only 19 years old.
19 years old, she's still a very young fighter whose body is still growing, and it's entirely possible that down the line, Jasmine Parr could see herself move up to super flyweight.
It's entirely possible. Here and now, she's campaigning in the flyweight division, where Marlene Esparza holds both the WBA and WBC titles. Gabriela Alanis of Argentina, unbeaten fighter, unbeaten champion. She's got the WBO.
Nareli Musinho of Mexico, she's got the IBF. She's got the blue belt.
Possible that down the line, when she's ready, Jasmine Parr might find herself so confronted with one of these fighters, one of these champions in a world title bid. Her being so young, that seems far from now, and it's just as possible that she could see herself moving up in weight at some point, going to super flyweight.
She's definitely one to watch out for.
At or around these weights, she is a very young fighter that shows ability, shows promise, has some name value. Being the young daughter of kickboxing legend John Wayne Parr, that's got to be worth something to the Aussies.
Fighting is in her blood.
Fighting's a family business. John Wayne Parr and G. Parr, they're both fighters, both kickboxers.
And so is Jasmine Parr. She's already got something like 30 kickboxing matches, 3 boxing matches. She's transitioning from Muay Thai and kickboxing over to boxing. And like I said, I think she's got a future.
It takes for a young fighter like this to bring attention to a weight class, to a division. A young fighter who you can watch progress, a young fighter who you can really get behind. And I think Jasmine Parr is that young fighter at or around these weights who could herald a new era in the women's flyweight and super flyweight divisions.
One of several young fighters that may herald a new wave of talent at these weights. Yet another young fighter I've got my eye on is the United Kingdom's own unbeaten up-and-comer, Shannon Ryan.
She's already boxing on a major platform under the Boxer banner. She fights over there on Sky Sports. You might have seen her.
Yeah, she campaigns at super flyweight, and Jasmine, she campaigns at flyweight.
These fighters may usher in a new era at 112 and 115 pounds, respectively. Many good years ahead of them, and good ceiling, good talent, good ability.
As stated, Shannon Ryan's with Boxer, and Jasmine Parr, she's with Ace Boxing Group in the land down under, down there in Australia, a well-to-do Australian-based promotional outfit.
The hope is that in the coming year, Jasmine can be a little bit more active, just a little bit more. She debuted as a professional late last year in December, had 2 fights since then, has a grand total of 3 professional contests, 3 professional bouts. This early in a fighter's career, ideally, you want to fight a fighting at least 3 to 4 times, something similar to what you see with Sky Nicholson.
Yet another unbeaten up-and-comer from Australia.
Campaigning several divisions north of flyweight. She's all the way up there at featherweight.
Better still, I'd like to see Jasmine Parr be a little bit more active in the coming year, get in at least 3 to 4 fights, if possible.
Saving grace is that she is very young. She's got plenty of time to fully develop and round out as a fighter. This is definitely one to watch out for in the land down under. Congratulations to her for advancing to a professional record of 3-0 this past weekend. In men's super middleweight news, on the heels of his big win over then unbeaten Zach Parker, John Ryder says, "I'm standing pretty now. Would be a dream to fight Canelo. Whenever, wherever." According to Eddie Hearn, the fight between John Ryder and Canelo may take place anywhere from the United Kingdom to the United States to south of the border in Mexico. "I'm standing pretty now," Ryder stated after the win. "It would be a dream to fight Canelo on Cinco de Mayo. Whenever, wherever. It's a great win for me." The win came in from behind an anticlimactic fashion. Ryder, a 35-year-old southpaw from the Islington section of London, trailed on 2 of the 3 judges' scorecards after 4 rounds, but enjoyed a strong 4th round and sensed that the momentum was strongly shifting in his favor. Derbyshire's Parker alerted Ryder and referee Howard Foster of a damaged right hand, which left him unable to continue. I thought the tide was starting to turn, and I was getting more on top, noted Ryder.
Gotta be honest, I didn't think John would pull this off. I didn't think he could win a points decision on a Frank Warren show as the away fighter in many ways.
This is the Matchroom guy fighting on a Queensbury promotion show. Do you get the sense that Frank and the judges were going to do this guy any favors, give him any consideration?
You heard what they said. He was behind on the cards.
I thought the tide was starting to turn and I was getting more on top. These things happen in boxing. It was a bad injury for him, but it feels like a robbery of a victory for me. It's just one of those things. Nevertheless, Ryder is now riding a 4-fight winning streak since a disputed 12-round loss to then unbeaten WBA super middleweight titleist Callum Smith in their November 2019 meeting.
We've often talked about that fight, how there's a lot of people out there who feel John Ryder won that fight with Callum Smith. A lot of people out there who feel he should have gotten the nod, he should have gotten the decision, he should have went on to become this division's WBA and Ring Magazine champion, though as luck would have it, he ends up getting a Canelo fight anyway.
Call it karma. Call it kismet. What was meant to be was meant to be.
Even if he didn't get the decision on that day, it has not stopped him from sharing the ring with the cash cow of boxing, at least in this part of the world. This is where I want to be,
said Ryder. Whether to fight Canelo or for any of the 4 belts, so be it.
As you can imagine, the usual suspects are already poo-pooing on the idea that Canelo will share the ring with John Ryder.
They don't like the fight. They're still hoping that Al Heyman can convince Canelo Alvarez to do more business with him beyond the short-lived stint he had over there on PBC Island opposite the ring, Caleb Plant.
I've never seen a group of people trash a guy so vigorously whilst at the same time seeking his validation as much as these guys do.
And if Canelo Alvarez is just a fraud, a phony, a fake, then what are you so desperate to see him fight those guys for? Those guys are supposed to be the best in show, ain't they? They ought to be fighting each other.
Word around the campfire is that former WBO 2 division champion Demetrius Andrade has already crossed over to the PBC side of things, and he will return to action early next year on the undercard of Davis versus Garcia, not to be confused with Ryan Garcia, Hector Garcia.
You give Canelo Alvarez so much shtick over who he fights, but who'd Demetrius fight this year?
Nobody.
Who'd Jermall Charlo fight this year?
Nobody.
These are the guys you're advocating for. These are the guys you're campaigning for. These guys that sat out the entirety of this year. Hey, who'd those guys fight last year then?
Jason Quigley.
Juan Macias Montiel. You're gonna give Canelo Alvarez shtick for fighting John Ryder, but you're okay with those guys.
You're super impressed with Demetrius's boxing based on how he looks against the Jason Quigleys of the world. You're super impressed with Jermall sharing the ring with guys like Juan Macias Montiel.
And if the rumors ring true, and the intel checks out, if Demetrius Andrade has in fact inked a partnership with the PBC and he's going to be boxing there moving forward, who do you think he's going to be sharing the ring against in his next fight when he sat out all of this year? Likely another Jason Quigley-esque kind of guy.
And this is the guy you're so fucking super impressed with. Canelo Alvarez unifies an entire division in just 11 months, continues to take on champions at higher weights, so that as soon as he fights a John Ryder, you lose your fucking mind.
I bet you they don't give Canelo Alvarez any credit for knocking out Caleb Plant, then unbeaten IBF super middleweight champion Caleb Plant. They don't give Canelo any credit for that, but if David turns around and does it over a year later, he's supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread.
You don't want to give Canelo any credit? Don't give him any credit, because here's reality.
He's gonna do his numbers whether you give him his credit or not. Without short plaudits and without short credit, he's still doing more than the guys that you do like.
And more people that matter, more people that pay to see boxing, more consumers are on his side than they're on those guys' side. You know, those 2 guys that sat out all of this year.
What are you gonna do now, huh? What are you gonna do now, princess? You're gonna get upset? You're gonna argue that those guys got the same size following as Canelo? You know they don't, and that's why.
The same applies to David Benavidez. All he did this year was fight David Lemieux. What kind of following do you think you're gonna amass with that kind of matchmaking?
You can bitch and moan about it all day long till the cows come home, but nobody's gonna hear you. Your cries will fall on deaf deaf ears over the roar of Canelo Alvarez's adoring public who are going to support him because he already paid his dues, while you support a bunch of guys that didn't.
Fucking bozo.
A John Ryder fight will be an aesthetically pleasing fight to the eye because John Ryder, he's no outside jabber and he's no pure boxer. He's a mid-range to inside guy, an action guy. So you're going to get an action fight between him and Canelo.
He's the kind of fighter, he stays in character. He put Zach Parker on his back foot. The normally aggressive, come-forward, body-punching Zach Parker.
He's going to come forward on Canelo and give Canelo Alvarez all the countering opportunities he needs to make this an eye-catching fight, an appealing fight, an attractive fight to the eye.
And I know what the critics are saying. That John Ryder don't deserve no Canelo fight, but Jermall Charlo does for sitting out all of this year. Demetrius, he deserves it.
He sat out all of this year too. And what about David Benavidez? All he did was fight an over-the-hill David Lemieux. He deserves it more than John.
Fuck off.
You don't have to like it. You can keep waiting for Jermall and Demetrius to return to action, watching those two guys kick a can down the road.
Fuck off.
Nobody gives a fuck what you want to see.
Fuck off.
Keep being super impressed with these quasi-retired, sparsely active fighters if that's what you want.
Canelo Alvarez can't have a keep busy fight. Every single fight Jermall Charlo's had as a middleweight is a keep busy fight.
Demetrius too, I'm sorry to say. You guys, you ain't got no say in the matter. You ain't got no control over this thing.
Fuck off.
Finally, in my previous video, we talked about this past weekend's action and how Tyson Fury crashed Joe Joyce's interview on BT. After stopping Derek Chisora, he said, "I want to come in and call him out again. No one calls out Joe Joyce. He deserves a world title shot. If the rabbit, Alexander Usyk, don't fight, then me and Joe will do Wembley." There you are. It's on telly.
There's a feeling in some circles that Tyson Fury, in spite of all his candor, he really doesn't fancy the Usyk fight. That's why he's conveniently injured immediately after the sparring session with Derek Chisora.
The timing of it all is impeccable.
Is there any reason to believe that Tyson Fury would rather fight Joe Joyce than Alexander Usyk?
Tyson Fury, who says, "I've got to maybe have surgery on my right elbow. I had the left one done, so I've got to have it done. It will take about 6 to 8 weeks to heal. We'll see when we can be ready for this fight." And if he has this surgery immediately,
Ideally, if he were to have that surgery now, he'd obviously have to spend the remainder of December going into January recuperating, which would rule out an Usyk fight for February.
6 to 8 weeks, right?
He'd spend most of January recuperating if he had the surgery now.
Which would then make an Usyk fight in February unlikely. An Usyk fight that Lennox Lewis cautions is no walkover fight for Tyson Fury.
In spite of what he and his rabble of talking heads would have you believe.
The respective promoters are looking to match them in the ring early 2023. Fury holds a significant size advantage, but Lewis cautions that it won't be an easy fight. I think it's going to be a great fight. Usyk is a champion. He's been unified champion for a little bit. Lewis told BT Sport he came to the fight, and I know he was watching, feeling the energy. He's going to try and find a way to beat Tyson Fury. It's not going to be a walkover for Fury. This man, Usyk, is a champion. This man is dedicated. He puts everything into his training and his will to win.
Tyson Fury all of a sudden has an issue with his elbow that needs working on. He's talking about surgery that could see him sitting out 6 to 8 weeks recuperating.
And as stated, if he has the surgery now, he sits out the better portion of next month, the better portion of January, which would then rule out a February showdown with Usyk.
If he has the surgery, they'd have to push the Usyk fight into March.
That's if he has the surgery. If he doesn't have the surgery, then and only then can they do the fight sooner rather than later.
Tyson Fury is unable to fight Alexander Usyk next. Usyk may have to face one of his mandatory challengers, of which there are 3. Joe Joyce by way of the WBO, Daniel Dubois by way of the WBA, and Philippe Hrgovic by way of the IBF. The order from the IBF has already come down for Usyk to face Philippe.
And there is some confusion as that order has already come down, but the Frank Warren and Queensbury BT side of things are saying that the IBF isn't even next in the rotation.
Next in the rotation is supposed to be the WBA, according to them, which would then mean that Alexander Usyk would have to fight Daniel Dubois.
Daniel Dubois, who was in action this past weekend opposite the ring, a cruiserweight who moved up to heavyweight for the fight. Kevin Lorena, short, stumpy guy, southpaw.
A cruiserweight who moved up in weight and fights out of the southpaw stance, like Usyk fights out of the southpaw stance. Is that a coincidence?
I don't know, but based on Daniel's performance this past weekend, if he were to share the ring with Alexander next, well, I don't like Daniel's chances. He almost got knocked out by Kevin Lorena. What's a better, more proven fighter in Alexander Usyk gonna do to you?
I think Filip Prgovic, by way of the IBF, is a bit more formidable than Daniel, and I think that Joe Joyce, by way of the WBO, is the most formidable. More formidable even than Filip Prgovic.
I think that's the most difficult fight of the three, though Alexander wouldn't be in unfamiliar territory opposite the ring, Joe Joyce. We've talked about it several times. They already met in a semi-pro contest some years ago, a 5-rounder, and Usyk won the fight. Can he do the same thing over 12 rounds? In a pro fight...
Hey, listen, according to the IBF, Filip is next, but according to Tyson Fury's handlers, it's not Filip that's next. By all rights, it's supposed to be Daniel Dubois.
You hear what Tyson Fury's saying. He keeps bringing up Joe Joyce. He keeps bringing up that he deserves a title shot. So if he has this surgery and he can't fight in February and Usyk is bogged down by one of these two mandatory challengers, that would then have to mean that Tyson Fury may not fight Usyk in his next fight, at which point he might move to fight Joe Joyce.
It's an easy in-house fight to make. Now, Joe Joyce is not the mandatory challenger for Tyson Fury's green belt. He's the mandatory challenger for Usyk's brown one, but why would he wait for Usyk if they can fast-track him to a shot at Fury?
They could sell a lot of tickets domestically with that fight. They could do some decent buys with it as well. More, I think, than what they just did with Derek Chisora, because everybody knows, underneath it all, that was just a sparring session. That was just a keep busy fight. On the heels of Joe Joyce's biggest career win, a knockout win over Joseph Parker.
Yeah, they can sell that fight.
Does Tyson Fury, for any reason, prefer a fight with Joe Joyce than a fight with Alexander Usyk? Does he view it stylistically as an easier fight, a more straightforward fight with a more straightforward opponent than Alexander?
I don't know. Joe Joyce is a big guy, and he really fits that moniker. The Juggernaut? That's what he is.
Fury wants to fight that guy?